Okay, hello everyone. My name is Hayden Reach-Jones. I'm the Policy and Development Officer for the North Yorkshire Safeguarding Children Partnership. Welcome to today's Masterclass. If you could just put your name in the chat box, just so that we can take a tally of who's actually attended and for your attendance certificates, that sort of thing. And also, this session is going to be interactive. We're going to have some pause points for people to be able to talk. I'm delighted today to be joined by Vicky Green, who's the Director of Services for the Marie Collins Foundation. She's a registered social worker with over 30 years experience working in the field of child protection. Much of her social work career has been with local authorities as well, through children's social care. For those of you who don't know, the Marie Collins Foundation is a registered charity that offers a cohesive approach to addressing the recovery of children of needs and their families who suffer harm online, with a vision to ensure that all children and young people who suffer sexual abuse, facilitated by the internet or otherwise, are supported to recover and live a safe, fulfilling lives free from fear and positive about their future. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Vicky. Vicky.
Thank you very much. And I'll share my screen now. Hello, everybody. And as Hayden was saying, I do want this to be interactive. I don't want you putting your feet up and falling asleep. I know he said to make a brew and relax and learn. And I really do want us to do this together. Now, some of you will know me. Some of you will have met me through various different training events that we've been running in North Yorkshire, and I'll talk about those a bit later, because we do have a really good history with North Yorkshire, and one that I hope will continue into the future in terms of our partnership working, because we do use you and for testing things out, for thinking of new innovative ways of working. And I know I work very closely with both James and Hayden in trying to think of the ways forward, but we'll talk more about that in the future. But for now, please do fasten your seatbelts, and I'll try and give you a whistle-stop tour, because what Hayden asked me to cover, or what we agreed, was I'd give you some idea of the latest police trends, give you some information from the helplines, and that's an interesting one. Give you a kind of overview of what young people are telling us, and that's research from our partners. Tell you a little bit more about us, although Hayden's given us the full introduction. But all the way through, I want you to ask questions. I want you to think about what we're saying, and I want you to just post them in the chat, and Hayden will ask them for you. Or if you want to ask them, I'd love to hear from you. So please do. So let's start first with the scale of online abuse. So this comes from the NCA, who talk about 300,000 individuals, 300,000 in the UK posing a sexual threat to children. It's a phenomenal number. That the UK here is one of the top 3 consumers of child sexual abuse live streaming from the Philippines and other countries. The Internet Watch Foundation has blocked 8.8 million attempts by UK internet users to access indecent images of children. And latest statistics show a sharp increase in the number of CSA offences recorded in the last 5 years. So that statistic is year ending March 2018. This problem is getting bigger and bigger. But our most recent information is that they're actually suggesting, and this is from a meeting just last month, that 300,000 offenders is probably a big underestimate. They think that in their next report, the National Crime Agency will be revising this upwards. They're also suggesting that there'll be an increase because those offenders who have started their offending during COVID and have overcome that first hurdle to committing an offence in terms of getting feeling okay about it, will continue their offending. They've taken this time to actually learn all the skills, learn all the tricks. And we at the Marie Collins Foundation have seen some really new and even more devious ways of grooming children that I hadn't come across before in my 30 plus years experience in this field. I even had a young person this week telling us that he had, or rather it wasn't him telling me, it was in this chat log that I was reviewing with his parents. The way that the groomer actually got to him was saying, let's move into another room, a private space. And he replies, no. And the groomer says, well, is that because I'm black? And the young person goes, no. He said, it is, you're racist. And the young person, I'm not racist. Yes, you're racist. If you weren't racist, you come into that room with me. And of course, for this young person, only 10, he did not want to come across as racist. So he went into the room. So they're developing their skills, they're developing their methodology. And realistically, we've had young people at home, online, and for this particular young person, parents thought he's doing his schoolwork. So if you actually think of that, it's realistic to assume that there's going to be an increase in access to victims thanks to COVID. So they're they've also seen a notable increase in the number of platforms that are offering live streaming, and have seen an increase in across all of the common apps. And in fact, it was in the paper today that there's a lot of Facebook related apps. There's recent research launched today from the NSPCC talking about that all the affiliated Facebook apps, so your WhatsApp, etc., that they are being used predominantly. Those are the platforms that groomers are using. And what we know from research is young people are sharing images through ordinary platforms that people who don't share images are using as well. So there's no one particular website that is dangerous. There's no one particular platform that's dangerous. All of them offer the ability for groomers to get access to children. But at the Mary Cons Foundation, we have dealt recently with quite a number of cases of TikTok, of young people being accessed through that, and also Discord and your other chat forums. So we have seen an increase in self-generated indecent imagery. We struggle with the phrase self-generated because that puts a bit of responsibility, makes it sound as if we're blaming the young person for generating it themselves. So what we'd like to say is coerced self-generated. So it's coerced as a result of grooming or of extortion or threats and violence. So this problem's getting big. It is big. It's getting bigger. Between April last year, so the start of lockdown, and January this year, there's been a 24% increase in public reports to CEOP. And they're saying that 15.5% more from children compared with the previous year. And since September, there's been 46 more reports from professionals to the helpline. So it feels as if this is a problem that just isn't going to go away. And it's a problem we keep being told that we cannot arrest our way out of. So have any of you any idea how that will impact on your life going forward, on your professional lives, on the work that we're doing, how we can actually even start to address this? Because if you have any, or any ideas or any knowledge around this, would love to hear it. I'll give you some ideas. So Hayden, would you like to facilitate some discussion here?
Yeah, does anybody have any questions or comments that you have about what Vicky said so far? There's nothing in the chat, I don't think.
No.
No.
Well, for me, what it says to me is that we can feel overwhelmed, disabled, and completely disempowered by these sort of statistics. And whenever we think of 300,000 plus offenders in the UK of the sexual interest in children, us being the biggest consumers of live streaming, when we think of every platform that's out there has the potential to be used for abusive purposes, we can't help feeling sometimes just completely overwhelmed by this and thinking, how are we supposed to protect all the children that are around us? How are we supposed to respond? And it's really important that we consider the way that we talk to young people. And some of the messages I'll give you a bit later will help you with those conversations with young people. But it's about bringing it out of the closet and into the general conversation that we're having with young people day to day, and not in a negative way. 300,000 people with sexual interest in children means that there's going to be 300,000 people there potentially grooming young people. And yet we're putting responsibility on young people to protect themselves when that's our job. So what we are doing at the Mary Collins Foundation is that we are working with industry at looking at really innovative ways that we can tackle this. And this is where the politics come in now a little bit. One of the big difficulties with with Facebook apps is encryption. So whilst we can come up with and work with industry on developing really smart solutions like AI to monitor chats and pick up whenever chats are of a grooming nature, when we have the whole screening for those images that we know are abusive, and we've been able to digitally DNA them, so to speak, or fingerprint them, that all that information goes out on platforms, and that blocks any of those images. So if anybody does try to upload them or share them, they're blocked. But all that is dependent on there not being encryption. So whilst it can block the inadvertent discovery of things, it's dependent on the encryption. And that brings about that whole big debate between our right to privacy and our children's rights to be protected. And it's a really difficult balance for us to be getting. And in Europe, in the European Parliament, they're passing a law to stop platforms being able to do that sort of checking and balancing. So being able to use AI, being able to use this information to actually screen correspondence, communications that are going on. And that's going to seriously impact on our ability to be able to detect as well as to investigate. So if any of you, and this is where I call you to join us, because we're fighting this at the minute, a lot, not just Mary Collins Foundation, all our partners are in the safeguarding world, is to join in that and actually recognise that industry, we keep blaming industry, but the likes of Microsoft and Google and those sorts of organisations are trying to work with us to do something about this. And the law is preventing us, is stopping it. So we need to be more loud about this, and we need to have these conversations and enable these conversations to happen.
Emma has said, Emma Phillips, our policy officer, has said that we've had a police chief inspector yesterday who was saying that they're having to send response police officers to issues of young people receiving and sending sexualised images, as it's becoming so common in our schools and communities. I've also had Joanne Scott, who said that the council that she works for has seen a 50% increase in concerns from 2019 to 2020.
Wow. And yet, and this takes us beautifully on to the next slide, yet our professionals helpline, not Mary Collins Foundation, this is the UK Safer Internet Centre, are reporting that they have not had an increase in referrals, which is incredibly interesting because up to their reporting period, the young people hadn't been in school, and most of their referrals come from school. Now, I want to give you this information because if you're having this increase, in having to deal with these issues within your schools or within your settings, you do have the Professionals Online Safety Helpline that can guide you, give you advice. You're not on your own with it. And sometimes professionals are saying to us, and even James, I'm going to drop you in it here. We had this conversation this week, where professionals are feeling that they cannot keep up to date with the technology, with understanding the apps, how they work, how they can be misused. Hayden, you're rustling in my background here. so the answer to that one, and how do you keep up, if you hear them talking about TikTok and you're thinking, is this something to be concerned about? Or you hear them talking about Discord and you're wondering, what on earth is Discord? How, they're talking about servers, they're talking, I don't understand. You can ring the Professionals Online Safety Helpline and they will help you, particularly if you need to make a report. Now, they're really, really good in terms of and quite influential in terms of they sit on the safety groups of a lot of these big platforms. So roadblocks and all these sorts that appear to be, I don't want to sound sarcastic, but they want to appear to be putting the interests of children at heart. So they will have these safety councils and there will be representation. The UK Safer Internet Centre represents us on a lot of those. And very often what I do is I bring issues to them, or we at the Mary Collins Foundation bring issues to them when we're seeing trends. And that's how we work in partnership. And an example of that is we find that with Twitter, you could report harmful content directly. But if it was a child protect, so if it was racist or it was homophobic, you could report it. But it was child sexual abuse, you had to come out of the app and go online to report it through their web browser. So you have to really, it wasn't just the press of a button, report this tweet, report this. You had to actually come out to do it, to get it into the right category, to get it seen and get it taken down. So, and we could see different groomers on Twitter actively grooming, and we were struggling to get these taken down. So it was about getting the power with the UK Safer Internet Centre and the Professionals Helpline to actually move those sorts of issues forward. So I asked them to send me the information about what they do, because I think it's really important that you know they're out there and that they're there for you, and they do create amazing resources, and they do training, and they do provide resources for education, or for educating children, parents, professionals, and they're part of a massive big organisation that includes in the Southwest Grid for Learning, the Internet Watch Foundation, and ChildNet. And ChildNet are involved with D-Shame, which we'll talk about in a minute. But let me just skip through these slides because you don't need all of them. You need this. So last year, they have seen an increase, but most of their increases is not around safeguarding, but it's around GDPR and Zoom. And they're saying, because that's what the concerns from schools have been, because they're not in the schools, so the teachers aren't actually saying things. So going forward, we are likely to have, and I warn you of this, we're likely to see a huge increase. We're already seeing an increase in reports. But they're there for you if you're unsure what to do, or or you need help or assistance when it comes to those sorts of issues in terms of working with industry and supporting you in dealing with safeguarding issues. And that's their number. So I recommend that you have that at hand in your work settings so people can get the advice and guidance. Now, they'll give you advice and guidance on what to do, but they do not do direct work with young people. They don't work with abuse. They are a helpline to help you know how to navigate going forward. So it's not about Section 47. It's not about investigations. It's not about what to do if you've discovered a child has been abused. You want to know what to do about that, come to us. So this is the bit before. Okay, so that's talking about our helplines. The NSPCC have reported huge increases to their helpline of young people themselves ringing. The police have told me they've seen a huge increase in domestic abuse, and they're just waiting for that tsunami of increase in reports on child abuse as well. But together we can manage this. We really can. So has anybody any questions, Hayden, or will I just keep going?
No, there's no questions at the moment. What I would say is, in terms of our website, if anybody does have any significant issues about wanting to know more about some of the different things like Discord or Roblox or any of the ones that you mentioned there, Vicky, we do have information on our website under our parents and carers page, which links to the Safer Internet group and other well-known organisations, and about that explains what these systems are and how people can be protected on them as well, with some good facts and help sheets.
And that's really important. The Internet Matters is another really good website to go to. NSPCC have good information on e-safety and those sorts of issues, as it does, of course, the Southwest Grid for Learning and ChildNet. So there's certainly lots of information out there, but sometimes you just want to make a quick call just to check, is this something I should be concerned about? And that's where the helpline can come in. It's also where we can come in, but we're not about the technology. We're about children being abused by technology. And that's why at the start of our training, we very often say, this is not e-safety. This is about what to do if you're worried a child has been abused sexually online, has been sexually abused online. But in terms of the messages that young people are giving us, and feel free to interrupt me at any time as we go through this, we work very closely with Thorn. And Thorn are a massive, big non-profit organisation in the States who works a lot with industry on things like, I said about the AI, about the artificial intelligence, about I can't remember the name. It's Artemis. I can't remember the name of it. But and we've worked with them on looking at the sort of language that groomers use, and therefore the words combinations that we need to be giving to this AI to be able to trigger a concern. This needs to be looking at better. And Thorn have been very much involved in that, and they do phenomenal amounts of research. So I'm sharing some of the research that they have done, and it's reinforced by the European and UK research. But what we know is that young people, our safety messages are getting there. They're getting out there. Young people are learning how to protect themselves online. And what they're doing, for example, and it's very clever, is they are actually sharing images, because the sharing of nudes is normal as far as they're concerned. 40% of them say it is normal. But what they're doing is they're looking for those sites. So I've already talked about the struggle of encryption for us to protect children and to investigate. But children, young people, are saying they're brilliant because they're anonymous. We can protect ourselves by using these sort of encrypted sites, and sites that like Snapchat, that don't keep the videos. They prefer live streaming because nothing's recorded. There's no evidence of what they've done. So as long as you can do it over an app that allows for it not to be shared, they're protecting themselves. They do use text messaging and FaceTime and video calls, because obviously that doesn't record. So they are making informed choices, believe it or not, about how to actually share nudes with each other safely. So we need to be thinking about the fact that they do think it is safe to share nudes. They do think it is normal to share nudes, and they just have to think about how they do it. They're also telling us that they're on the internet because to explore their sexuality. 48% have told Thorn that they've been wanting to find out information about sexual orientation. And I've been saying this for years. A lot of them are going there to get sex tips, the how-to. And in my work with two particular young men who are gay, they actually got involved in internet dating apps to find out about gay sex, because nobody opened up that conversation for them. And that's why I was saying that sex and relationships education needs to talk about homosexual sex and heterosexual sex, because both those lads were groomed on these platforms and were subsequently sexually abused in the real world, so to speak. There are actually a huge number are looking at porn, and it's about us understanding what porn is. And I'm not talking about hypothetically, I'm talking about in reality. It does very much glorify violence, and it is certainly not empowering for women and girls. It has put huge pressure on boys on how to perform. It depicts predominantly heterosexual sex, so there are porn sites out there for everything that you would possibly be interested in. But young people are going out there, and they have a lot more information on the mechanics of sex than I ever did at their age, I can tell you that. But they're actually going out there to look for sex, to see the images, to learn more about it. When it comes to them sharing their own images, they're saying, we all do it, it's okay. And 43%, and we have this moral shock whenever we hear that young people are sharing images. But 43% say they felt positive about the experience. So I know that's still less than 50%. There's still a lot out there who don't feel so positive. But not every young person who's sharing an image is at a crisis. They're also developing very clearly the ways to actually respond to the creeps. Okay? So whenever I've talked to young people, have you heard about grooming? And they'll say to me, yes. We've talked about grooming in school, or my mum's talked to me about grooming, or my dad, or somebody else. We know what grooming is, and they kind of do that. Here we go again. Not another e-safety lesson. We know about the creeps. And they tell us that they'll block the creeps. We want them to report the creeps, because that's part of the solution. Part of the solution is going after the perpetrators. 67% will tell their friends, so that's why listening to the whole friendship group is so important. 53% just ignored. 39% will tell a parent. 18% will tell the police. That's actually quite a high number. I was quite surprised by that. And 15% will tell a teacher. So, excuse me, when we have schools saying that they have an increase in reports to them, what about the remaining percentage then? How are we capturing them? But it's 81% are dealing with it themselves, just blocking. So what are the barriers to actually telling? If less than half are telling, what are the barriers? Well, what they're saying is they're too embarrassed. And this is from the Project to Shame ChildNet. There's some fantastic information on this website. And they're saying that they feel too embarrassed. They're worried that we, the protectors around the child, are going to overreact. They're worried about what's going to happen next. Who's going to know? Everybody's going to know all the repercussions. They're worried about being targeted by those involved. Worried that they're the ones to blame. And I've come across this one a lot, where they feel responsible. And that's a really good silencer. And abusers use that to silence. or they want to sort it out themselves. Not reporting it on social media, they don't actually think anything will happen. So they won't bother pressing that report. And they don't want the police to know because they don't want their family to get involved, because then that brings more shame, brings more embarrassment, more potential overreaction. And they don't want that. So the numbers where images are being shared without them giving consent is on the increase. 6% of respondents across our adolescent age group in Denmark, Hungary and UK said they had their nude or nearly nude image shared without consent. And 41% said they'd seen this happen. And that hasn't really come back up the way I wanted to, and I'm going to skip these. But if you think the majority of respondents agree, there's a sexism going on out here. Majority of respondents agree that there's a different reaction when it's a girl who shared her image than there is a boy, and that a girl will actually be frowned upon, that they will actually think badly about her, whereas they wouldn't think quite so badly about a boy doing it. And when discussing threats online, young people fixate on strangers. I know that people pretend to be a different gender or age to talk to little kids, and they'll find out where you live. So that story has gone out very clearly. My experience, and I'm sure a lot of your experience, is a lot of the risk of the sharing of images without consent, of the being enticed, forced, coerced into taking images and sharing them, the being extorted and bullied, is peer on peer. There is definitely that 300,000 adults with a sexual interest in children. And the sharing of images within schools may not be because those people have a sexual interest in children. It could be peer on peer and it is bullying. But the impact on young people of those images being shared is catastrophic. But we are somehow enabling our young people to protect themselves from the external difficulties. And we're not enabling them or helping them recognise that some of the abusive behaviour within peer groups is not acceptable and we need to be challenging them. And what this all does is kind of make it more difficult for young people to detect the danger, because we've created somehow this whole atmosphere, this whole societal, we call it societal grooming. We've kind of created this perfect storm that perpetrators are able to use. So if we think logically, if you've got, we are all asked to do it. We all do it. It's okay. And a lot of young people sharing images, and there are no negative consequences to it. They may have felt a bit uncomfortable after having shared it. They may have regretted sharing it, but it hasn't actually gone catastrophically wrong. Then, if it's commonplace to be asked to share an image, how do they detect between just the normal sharing and the sharing by somebody who is then going to go on and abuse them? And yet we're putting a lot of responsibility on them to do that. So our messages need to be really around, okay, so you're going to be sharing images potentially, possibly. For a lot of you, this is going to be absolutely okay. It's not going to go wrong for you. For some of you, it might go wrong. If that happens, you don't have to suffer in silence. We can help you. And you can tell them we can help, because there are these fantastic systems, despite the negative bits I gave you, there are these fantastic systems like the DNA fingerprinting of photographs. So that whole CADE system, the Child Abuse Image Database, that we can get images up to. If we know where images are, we can get them blocked, we can get them hashtagged, and we can get that information out onto social media or across all the platforms that are engaged with the Internet Watch Foundation, for example. And then the likelihood, my fear is Granny's going to find that picture of me. Well, actually, we can reduce the likelihood of that happening. We can't completely eradicate it, but we can reduce it. So we can talk to young people, but if they do come to us and say, I did this, my image is out there, I'm scared, we can do stuff to actually lessen the likelihood of it having more harm. And that's what Tink Palmer, or some of you will have met Tink in years gone by. Tink Palmer, our CEO, says, our job is to do no further harm. No further harm. And if we go back to this slide here about the top reason as to why they don't seek help, it's also about us with the too embarrassed. It's thinking, what sort of strategies can we put in place so young people aren't too embarrassed? What can we think there? Because I'm just going to get my little laser pointer because I quite like it. Are we acting disgusted around the thought of young people posting images? Are we thinking, why on earth would they want to do that? So if we are acting disgusted, we need to change our attitude. Are we throwing our hands up in horror saying, I cannot believe this has happened yet again? You're worried that the school are going to overreact, they're worried the parents are going to overreact, they're worried that everybody's going to overreact. And, if we think about, worried about what would happen next, maybe we need to be talking about strategies that young people, that we can put in place with young people. And so it's about having the conversations, enabling them to talk to us and enabling us to go forward with that. Okay. Hope none of you are asleep yet with your cup of coffee and your brew. Hayden, have you any comments that you would like to share?
There's none in the chat, but what I was thinking of, and it's been sort of like one of my thoughts for quite some time, is in relation to, I think children and young people get a lot of education about this, but one of the areas where I think there's probably a lot less knowledge is parents, and listening to the fact that only less than 40% of children will go to the parents. Some of that will be because of that embarrassment or fear of repercussions from the parents, but I think also I think some of that might also be, well, my parents won't know what to do. And I think it's really hard because schools do put on events. So, for example, I used to be chair of governors, and in my school, we put on an event for parents. It was about 160 parents, the school had, connection with. And, I went there as chair of governors and also as a parent in the school. And there was 4 parents that turned up, and I was one of them for an evening class on e-safety. And I think it's about, maybe we need to tackle the parent sort of approach of, it's too complicated, I don't understand it, kids understand it better than us as well, because it's about knowing what the risks are, not knowing all of the technicalities.
That's a really interesting point. And one of the things that we've done at the Mary Collins Foundation is we have actually put out, and some of you, didn't mean to do that. Some of you will have seen it in terms of, we put out an advert or a flyer about, I'm just trying to get to it, so bear with me, I was trying to scan nicely through. It was, how can I help my child, this flyer here. So we put this out last week, had to close it by the middle of this week because we had 112 parents put their names forward in just less than a week. And this is about, and again, it's about us changing our emphasis maybe with parents from e-safety to actually, how can I help my child? How can I help my child survive and thrive online? And to changing, and we haven't run this session yet. So this is just a suck it and see. And I might have it absolutely wrong. It's a pilot that we're doing with 3 sessions. Rhiannon and I are running them. and we're going to see how it goes. We'll be evaluating them and everything to see if these are the messages that hit home. And it's based on our leaflet that we designed in conjunction with the National Working Group. Excuse me, coughing in your ears. And you're just giving some very simple messages to parents, because I think you're right. I think both parents and professionals are disabled by technology and forget how to parent.
Yeah.
So I don't want to put blame on parents. Parents don't groom their, well, obviously some do. But the majority of parents that we're talking about do not actually groom their children for sexual abuse. It's perpetrators who groom their children for sexual abuse. So let's not blame the parents for their child having been abused. But parents do have responsibility in joining with us in that whole circle of protection. And it's about how can we enable them to do that.
And I think some of it's about the training parents how to react to it, because I think it's the Think You Know website. They've got some 4 really good videos about how to address if your child says that they've sent out images of themselves, and about, I've done a nude selfie, I think it's called, or something like that. But they've got a very good selection of videos on the Think You Know website about that. We've got some chat in the the chat, surprisingly enough. Emma has said that the messages are almost very similar to the harm reduction messages we give out to young people about drug and alcohol. We've also got Sarah, who's asked, how in schools can we encourage children to come and talk to us about their experiences?
By being approachable. It's the same thing for it, and that's very easy for me to say that sitting here the other side of a camera and away from you. But how we can encourage it is by just always having the conversation going on, not in a scary way. And we're always trying to get that balance whereby we're not petrifying children. And when you have, I had an 11-year-old the other week say that the world is a really scary place. It's really scary for me and my friends. And, our response was, the response through the mum was, it's not your job to keep yourself safe. It's my job to keep you safe. Tell me what it is you're scared about, and I'll see what I can do to make it better. And it's about encouraging those conversations about what makes you feel unsafe and not showing shock, as I said, and talking about what is normal. And if a young person says, I know somebody shared a nude. What do you think, miss? Or what do you think, sir? I say, okay. And how was that for them? Rather than, oh my goodness, I shouldn't have done that. Once you post, you lose control and it's out there. Which is what we're finding is that those negative messages, just all they do is they put young people off from seeking help. And if you've ever heard Rhiannon, our subject matter expert at the Mary Collins Foundation, ever heard her talk, she said she knew all of the messages. She knew all of these safety messages. Hayden, I'm going to have to ask you to talk a bit because I need to go and get a drink. I'm starting to cough.
Okay. I think one of the questions that has been suggested was about how can we engage parents in e-safety events. I do know of a school in North Yorkshire that has had some success in this area previously by sort of when those events sort of like were in place. So if parents were coming in and dropping the children off, run it for an extra event on the evening or whatever, is to have those messages running or have a talk timed at at that time. And also when you've got parents coming in for parents' evening, maybe having like a screen with these messages or a video rolling on loop that provides that information to people as well. I know it's not quite the active way of engaging, but it is another way of actually getting those messages across.
And it's normalising. Sorry about that. I don't have COVID. I've just got a tickle in my throat. I've been inoculated. Yeah, it's about continuing with the conversations and continuing with the non-judgmental by showing that you understand how young people behave online. You understand the context of child development, that risk-taking behaviour is part of normal adolescence, and that you're there to help, support, and not judge. Those are the messages that we need to be getting across, and are very important ones.
There was a question about how are we going to get the children to initially have those chats, and I think some of that is maybe about that professional curiosity sort of thing as well, where if we have a hidden harm campaign running, and on that hidden harm campaign obviously we identify lots of different factors where that might be an indicator that a child or young person is suffering abuse of some sort of type, and it's about really ensuring that you're building the rapport with the children and young people, and that you maybe get the right person to ask the question, so that children do go to one teacher rather than another because they feel they have a better relationship with them. Maybe it's about, if there is a concern and it's raised, about that professional curiosity and about having the skills to have the right person approach that person and that young person, and seeing if there is anything wrong.
I think it's about being human. And we can all do that. You don't need to have a qualification to do that. And it's about, as I said, how do you encourage young people to have these conversations? You just have them. Just show an interest in their lives and show an interest in what they're doing, whether it's online or in games. It's the finding out what films they're posting on TikTok. I'm going to have to give this up. Anyway, we'll struggle on. We won't.
Does anybody else have any other questions in relation to thoughts, or has anybody got anything that they've done in their school that is a good example of how they've engaged children and young people in these sort of conversations?
Hayden, can I come in? It's just James.
Yeah.
Just touching on in terms of, I think, in terms of getting the messages out to parents and sort of speaking as a parent rather than someone who kind of works in safeguarding. I think for me, it's seeing information sort of like on my school's Facebook social pages where they may be posing questions or sharing sort of relevant information. I think I'm more inclined to read that sort of stuff than sort of sign up to a 1 hour session about how I'm going to keep my child safe online. And putting sort of regular things in newsletters, like most parents will, I would imagine, read the school newsletter. We get one sent sort of every Friday. We have a flick through it and see what's in there. And it might be only very much here's a nugget of information, a piece of information that we want to share with you, rather than sort of saying, here's the Safeguarding Partnership website, there's loads of information on that. It's about maybe pulling out some important messages and key messages. And I think through the work that we're doing around the hidden harm, so trying to get people outside of the school community looking out for each other, and trying to ask for some guidance and support, and if there is a need for additional information, it's about how we can do that. But I think schools and any organisation who has social media platforms, who have access directly to parents, it's those small bits of nugget of information I think is really key to try and pull that. And I've seen some really good examples of schools right across sort of North Yorkshire promoting different aspects of safeguarding, but it's embedded and weaved in and out of sort of success stories within school, sharing of images. It's just getting that kind of online positive conversation about safeguarding.
I think you're right, and Claire Barrowman, who is obviously one of our Schools people has said about the pupil digital leaders can be good for getting messages out to pupils and parents, short updates on school newsletters, accessible information on a school website, social media messages through Twitter, Facebook, all of that sort of stuff.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, again, it's actually thinking about smarter ways of reaching out to young people. I had a really interesting and inspiring meeting with some media students from Huddersfield University, who, as part of their project, are developing resources for us on how we can speak directly to young people, and that will interest them, because very often adults produce the information and put it out there in the form of PDF or something, and young people just bypass it. So we've got lots of little, potentially going forward, lots of little snippets of films and animations and posters, campaigns that we'll be able to use social media to reach out to, and some of those are for parents as well. So should this come to its fruition, and honestly, they're really, really good. Young people have all of the ideas. All that information will be shared with you through the partnership that we have with North Yorkshire. And, for example, we have just been, successful in our application to the, I always forget what this stands for, but it's the Police and the Fire Service funds and community funds. And through that, one of the things that we're going to be doing is rolling out some sort of advertisement campaign, some sort of awareness raising that you will all be able to promote through your own websites, your own Twitter feeds. We need to get smarter about using technology, really, to reach people. And if we go back to me talking about the parent session, within days or within hours of it being put out there, we were getting people applying immediately. And it was just coming through at quite an alarming rate, actually. I was sort of thinking, how do I stop this? And that was because we used all our platforms, including all of you. We sent all the information to you and you pushed it out there. And if we can do that with the push of a button, we need to be thinking more about how we can just get little bite-sized messages. Not even I know you said newsletter, James, but it's even more dynamic than that. And one of the worst websites you will come across, in my view, at the minute, is the Mary Collins Foundation landing page one, because there's not enough information on there. And we're looking at revamping that and changing it to make it a lot more dynamic, so that people are attracted to it and will go into it and will have a look at it. But we've also got e-learning packages that this fund will fund. So there's going to be 300 licenses, which includes licenses to our GPM platform, which I'll go on to talk about in a second. I am aware we're running out of time. And we're going to be rolling out training for school safeguarding leads, school liaison officers and other different personnel. And there's a working group that's meeting next week, which Hayden is part of, and lots of our police colleagues are part of, looking at how can we get these messages out. Because one of you mentioned in the chat that, we're having to send every police officer we can get our hands on out to respond to this, because the needs got so big. And what we're wanting to do, and I know Emma's involved in this as well, what we're wanting to do is have every police officer out there that is potentially going to respond to actually have the knowledge and skills to know how to respond, so they're not doing any more harm to young people. So we've also, just let me introduce very briefly to our Global Protection Online Network that North Yorkshire have got 300 licenses for. This was set up, this is international, okay? So I was saying about, the UK being the one of the largest consumers of live streaming of indecent images, of films, of child abusive materials from the likes of the Philippines. And that sort of thing just helps us recognise how the landscape is changing and evolving before our very eyes. And as Ernie Allen, he's lovely, for the chair of We Protect, has said, as more and more children come online around the world and the technology and landscape changes and evolves, we now more than ever need a forum for collaboration, networking and action. And we have that. We have that with our Global Protection Network. And the idea is to try and bridge these gaps and empower other nations to be able to protect the children that they have got, so that they are less likely to be victimized by perpetrators from around the world. So we were awarded funding from the End Violence Against Children to develop this platform, and it's dedicated. It's got whoops, gosh, that's one disaster after another for me. It's full of resources. You can just join. Go and join. It's the 300 licenses are for the safe e-learning package, but membership of you can just join the platform without doing the e-learning, and you won't have access to e-learning. That's the 300 licenses. But the idea is that you'll be able to connect with other professionals from around the world. You'll be able to look at all the resources we've got on there, and you'll be able to share your experiences with other colleagues, because there's a whole collaborate portion of it. And we also provide training through that, and that's training for our international audience, really. I'm going to skip through this, but this is what our landing page looks like. And it'll tell you all about it. It's got, as I said, a resource library, and that's a really good resource library. Now, I know you've got your own resource library, and maybe we can feed in one into the other, but we've got permissions from people from all across the globe. Our partnership is increasing all the time, and our connections are increasing, and they've given us permissions to share their materials. And I've actually found this a really useful place to go, like the Thorn research I quoted earlier, the Project to Shame research, all that. It's there. You don't have to go searching around for it. We're providing training nationally and internationally through it, and trying to not teach other people how to do things, but actually enable people within country to build up capacity within their own country. So we're running training for trainers programs, as well as having facilitated and trainer-led training through that. There's also obviously the Get Help, and in everything there's a donate. But it's going really well, and we've delivered training. I can't even remember it. We've got target countries. Vietnam, we're working with teachers, educators, social workers and police there to develop training packs and education materials for children and young people, because actually in the UK we have a lot that we can share with those countries. And we've also delivered training on how to do forensic investigations with the police in other countries in Africa. So I'm very aware, Hayden, that you're going to want to shut me up now, and I'm going to let you shut me up and say just go to our website. You'll see our professionals toolkit is there, downloadable. We're developing one for parents. We've got one for parents, but we're developing one for parents with children with additional needs. We've got our parents session and workshop for parents. We'll let you know how it goes. And I'm going now. Okay, Hayden, I've shut up, and I'm sorry for the coughing fit.
Thank you very much. Really appreciated you delivering that for us. Does anybody have any questions before we end the session? Okay, I'll take it that's a no. Just to remind everybody, don't forget that you can sign up to our e-bulletin. The link will be with the slide pack. Also, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. Thank you very much, Vicky, for doing that, and on behalf of the Marie Collins Foundation as well. And we look forward to seeing everybody at our next masterclass.